It seems you underestimated us, Richard. Now, everything you have is ours.
My name is Jian Lee, and yesterday the man who spent 6 months mocking the way I pronounced the word strategy was escorted out of the building by security, holding a cardboard box containing a stapler and a potted plant. He didn't look at me as he passed my desk. He couldn't. He was too busy trembling under the gaze of the man standing beside me. A man the world knows as a ruthless mafia boss, but whom I simply call my love. In London, power is often loud, shouted across trading floors and boardrooms. But true power? True power is silent. And karma? Sometimes karma wears a bespoke Italian suit and arrives in a black Rolls-Royce, just to remind the world who really owns the ground they walk on. I moved to London 3 years ago from Seoul. I came with 2 suitcases, a degree in international marketing, and a heart full of nervous hope. I loved this city before I even landed. The gray skies, the history, the stoic elegance of the architecture. I wanted to build a life here, to prove that I could compete in one of the toughest markets in the world. I found a job at Sterling & Finch, a boutique marketing agency in Canary Wharf. It was prestigious, the kind of place with glass walls, espresso machines that cost more than a car, and a view of the Thames that could take your breath away. But beauty often hides rot. The rot at Sterling & Finch had a name. Simon. Simon was the senior account director. He was tall, blonde, and possessed the kind of arrogance that only comes from never having been told no in your entire life. For my first week, Simon decided that I was not a colleague to be respected, but a prop to be used for his amusement. It started subtly. He would pretend not to hear me during brainstorming sessions. I would suggest an idea, my voice steady but soft, and he would frown, leaning in with exaggerated confusion. "Sorry, Jian," he would say, loud enough for the entire open-plan office to hear. I didn't quite catch that. The accent, it's a bit thick today, isn't it? The room would chuckle. A few junior associates would cover their mouths, eyes darting away. I would feel the heat rise up my neck, burning my cheeks. My English is fluent. I studied it for 15 years. I scored nearly perfect marks on every proficiency test. But in Simon's world, difference was a defect. I learned to endure it. In my culture, we value resilience. We value the strength of the willow tree, bending in the wind but never breaking. I told myself that his ignorance was his burden, not mine. I worked late. I double-checked every report. I made sure my work was flawless, so undeniable that his mockery would look foolish. But the better I performed, the crueler he became. One rainy Tuesday in November, everything changed. We were preparing for a pitch to a major luxury automotive brand. It was the biggest contract of the year. I had done the research. I had built the demographic models. I had stayed in the office until 10 p.m. for 2 weeks straight, surviving on vending machine coffee and determination. The morning of the internal review, Simon called us into the glass conference room. He paced at the head of the table, tapping a laser pointer against his palm. "Right," he said, scanning the room. "The client wants sophistication. They want British heritage. They want a voice that screams royalty." He stopped pacing and turned slowly to look at me. The room went quiet. "Jian," he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I think it's best if you don't present today. In fact, maybe you shouldn't be in the client meeting at all." My stomach dropped. "Simon, I prepared the entire strategy section. I know the data better than anyone." "It's not about the data, darling," he sighed, a sound of fake pity. "It's about the presentation. We can't have you stumbling over words in front of the executives. It looks unprofessional. It cheapens the brand. You understand, don't you? It's just business." He didn't just dismiss my work. He dismissed my dignity. He reduced my intelligence, my hard work, and my passion down to the cadence of my voice. The other team members looked down at their notebooks. No one spoke up. In that silence, I felt a loneliness so profound it nearly crushed me. Have you ever been humiliated like this? Have you ever had someone make you feel small just to make themselves feel big? If you have, tell me in the comments. I read them all, and I want you to know you are not alone. I nodded slowly, gathering my papers. I understand, Simon. Good girl, he said, turning his back on me. Make yourself useful and grab us some coffees, yeah? Since you're not presenting. I walked out of that room with my head high, but my hands were shaking. I didn't get the coffee. I went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and took 3 deep breaths. I didn't cry. I refused to cry for a man like him. Instead, I thought of the one place in London where I was never judged, only adored. I thought of Ethan. Ethan Ward was not a man who worked in a glass office. He owned the glass. He owned the land the office stood on, and likely the debt of the company that built it. To the public, he was a reclusive venture capitalist, a man of old money and few words. To the underground, he was the head of the Ward Syndicate, a family that had controlled the docks, the real estate, and the shadows of London for 3 generations. To me, he was just Ethan. The man who learned how to make kimchi jjigae because I missed my mother's cooking. The man who brushed my hair when I was tired. That evening, I went home to our penthouse in Knightsbridge. The rain was lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the city lights into blurred streaks of
Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more revenge and love stories. Turn on the bell notification to stay updated.
gold and red. Ethan was sitting by the fire, reading a document, a glass of whiskey resting on the table. When I entered, he looked up, and his sharp, calculating eyes instantly softened. He stood up, his tall frame casting a long shadow, and walked over to me. He didn't say a word initially. He just took my bag from my shoulder and cupped my face in his large, warm hands. "You look heavy, my love," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated against my chest. Did the world forget its manners today? I leaned into his touch, the tension of the day finally melting away. Just a difficult manager, Ethan. The usual. The usual? He frowned, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. Is this the same man? The one with the loud voice and the small mind? Simon, I whispered. He pulled me off the automotive pitch. He said my accent. He said it cheapens the brand. Ethan went still. It wasn't a violent stillness. It was the stillness of a predator that has just decided on a course of action. The air in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. He didn't shout. He didn't throw his glass. He simply kissed my forehead, a tender, lingering contact that felt like a promise. It cheapens the brand, Ethan repeated, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. He walked back to the fireplace and picked up his phone. Gian, do you like your job? Apart from him? I love the work, I said honestly. I love the strategy. I just hate how he makes me feel. Then you shall keep the work, Ethan said, tapping out a message. And we shall remove the obstacle. I think it is time I reviewed my portfolio. I haven't visited Sterling and Finch in quite some time. I looked at him, confused. You? What do you mean? Ethan turned to me, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. You know I invest in many sectors, Gian. Did I never mention that my holding company acquired the majority stake in your agency 4 years ago? I am the reason the lights stay on. My eyes widened. I had been working for my husband the entire time, and I didn't even know it. Tomorrow, he said, pouring me a glass of water. Wear your best suit, the blue one. It matches your eyes. The next morning, the atmosphere at Sterling and Finch was frantic. An email had gone out at 6 a.m. The silent partner was coming for an unexpected operational review. No one knew who the silent partner was, only that they held the power to dissolve the entire agency if they wished. Simon was in a state of manic perfectionism. He was screaming at the interns, adjusting the blinds, wiping non-existent dust from the conference table. Everyone looks sharp, he barked, sweating through his shirt. This investor is old school. No mistakes. Gian, tuck your chair in, and for God's sake try not to speak unless spoken to. We need to look elite. I sat at my desk, wearing the blue suit, typing calmly. I felt a strange sense of peace. I knew the storm that was coming, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the thunder. At 10 a.m. sharp, the elevator doors opened. Usually the office buzzed with noise, but when Ethan Ward stepped out, the silence was absolute. He was flanked by two men in dark suits, his personal security, but he didn't need them to look dangerous. He wore a charcoal three-piece suit that cost more than Simon's annual salary. His posture was impeccable, his face an unreadable mask of authority. The agency director, a nervzan named Mr. Henderson, rushed forward. "Mr. Ward, what an honor. We weren't expecting." "I prefer surprises," Ethan said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. "It shows me how things really operate." Simon pushed his way to the front, straightening his tie, a desperate smile plastered on his face. "Mr. Ward, welcome. I'm Simon, Senior Account Director. I've heard so much about your vision. Please, let me show you the automotive pitch we're working on. It's world class." Ethan looked at Simon. He didn't shake the extended hand. He just looked at it until Simon slowly, awkwardly lowered it. "The automotive pitch," Ethan said, walking past him towards the main floor. "Is that the one where you removed your lead strategist because you didn't like her voice?" Simon froze. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a ghost. I beg your pardon?" Ethan stopped in the center of the office. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the room until they locked on me. I stayed seated, meeting his gaze. "Gian," Ethan said. His voice changed. The coldness vanished, replaced by a deep, respectful warmth. "Could you please come here?" I stood up. The sound of my heels clicking on the floor was the only sound in the world. I walked past the stunned interns, past the terrified director, and stood before the most dangerous man in London. "Mr. Ward," I said softly. "Mrs. Ward," he corrected, loud enough for everyone to hear. A collective gasp went through the room. Simon choked on air. "Mrs. Ward?" Ethan turned back to Simon. The predator was back. "You told my wife that her accent cheapens the brand. You told her she was unprofessional. You made her fetch coffee while you took credit for her data." Ethan took a step closer to Simon. Simon stumbled back, hitting a desk. "Intelligence has no accent, Simon," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "But incompetence? Incompetence sounds exactly like you." I didn't know," Simon stammered, sweat dripping down his nose. "Sir, I didn't know she was yours. If I had known." "That is exactly the problem," Ethan cut him off. "You treat people with respect only when you think they have power. A man who judges a woman by where she is from rather than what she can do has no place in my company." Ethan looked at Mr. Henderson. "Fire him, now, and ensure he never works in a Tier 1 agency in this city again. I'll make the calls personally." "Yes, Mr. Ward, immediately," Mr. Henderson squeaked. Ethan turned back to me. He extended his arm not as a boss, but as a husband. "Shall we go, Gian? I believe we have a lunch reservation, and I'd love to hear you pronounce strategy again. I find it quite charming." I took his arm. "I'd love that, Ethan." As we walked toward the elevator, I glanced back one last time. Security was already at Simon's desk with a cardboard box. He was slumped in his chair, head in his hands, his career dissolved in less than 5 minutes. He had mistaken silence for weakness and grace for submission. We stepped into the elevator and the doors closed, shutting out the chaos. Ethan pulled me close, kissing the top of my head as the lift descended. "Better?" he asked. "Much better," I smiled, resting my head against his chest. Justice doesn't always need a war. Sometimes it just needs the right man to walk into a room and remind the world of the truth. I am Gian Lee. I have an accent, I have a history, and now, thanks to karma and the man who loves me, I have my dignity back. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to When Karma Hits for more Mafia love and justice stories. Where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I'd love to hear.
Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more revenge and love stories. Turn on the bell notification to stay updated.